Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session.
I just have always felt like you need to diversify.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go all in on one thing because as we've learned through having lived through this pandemic, things can be shifted like that and you might be left with nothing. So having different sources of income, different sources of professional growth, I think is super important.
What needs to change in order to make you sleep better at night? And there's no right or wrong answer here. I could have 2 clients with identical on paper financial situations, and perhaps one is incredibly troubled by their credit card debt and wants to get that paid off. And perhaps the other one is incredibly troubled by having no money in savings and sees the credit card debt as, a second level problem, but not the number one problem. And so we tackle with, I don't come in with a prescribed, idea of, okay, this is the first step, this is the second step, this is the third step. It's really about figuring out what will make each individual person feel supported by their money.
There's a lot of energy behind words, and a lot of marketing words have a terrible energy. To refer to our customers as a target audience, like what a terrible energy behind it. To talk about putting customers in through a marketing funnel, right? Think about the visual of a funnel. The visual of a funnel is that it's wide open, open-hearted at the top, welcoming, but then it's like this conniving scheme to squeeze people through a small hole at the bottom. Now, I get the idea. A marketing sequence is important. That's how we get clients. But I hated the terminology of marketing funnel. So struggling with this for years, many years ago in my own business, I made a change internally that we would no longer have a marketing plan. We referred to it as an enrolling plan. And it shifted the burden of responsibility from marketing at people to get them to hire us to shifting the energy to like, what do we need to take responsibility for to enroll people? What do we need to take responsibility for to get people to take one step at a time closer to us?
And one of the things that I love to, well, I'll be honest, I don't love to do it, but I think it's super necessary and I love the results that come from it, is to do a self-imposed time study. So I make myself do one like once a year. It's not fun. It's kind of annoying, but it's so eye-opening. And so I will literally track my time. I'll use a tool like Toggle and I will track my time for an entire week and just see where am I spending my time. And it is so eye-opening because sometimes you think like, oh, I'm only spending, I spend a little bit of time every day responding to posts in my Facebook group or something, right? And then you go and you look and you're like, I spent 7 hours this week doing that, right? And it's like, wow, what could be gained if I got a community manager and I got that time back? What bigger vision things, what higher level tasks could I be doing if I outsourced?
Talking about how it's okay to want to build wealth, to think about the things that you can do with it. Think about the benefit that could come from it for your family, for your community. And also to have a really clear picture about those benefits. And that kind of helps her get more comfortable with the idea of building wealth. That's not a dirty word. That wealth is empowerment, right? It is a way to make change and to make impact. And so kind of looking at it from that angle instead of just like, let me get the highest valuation. It's not just about that.
To me, it doesn't feel integrity to pretend to be somebody I'm not, and then have somebody come into my orbit and potentially give me money, and then find out later that they feel like, surprised or upset that they invested in me because I represented myself one way when actually I was a different way.
I started working on my marketing, and I would sit at my desk every morning, even if I didn't have client work. I would sit at my desk every morning until whatever time and get myself into that mentality that I was actually doing something. And how did I do it? Okay, I worked on back end business stuff. I fixed my website. I changed my processes, and I just worked on organization for my business, the behind the scenes internal stuff. I started building a social media presence. I started, going that route, and it helped me shift my mentality.
I used to be very, very uncomfortable speaking in public to a group, very shy. And in my different roles, I was really forced to present financial statements to a board of directors. And a lot of times boards of directors are very, very high-powered, high-level corporate executives sitting on the 44th floor of a conference room in Manhattan, New York City. Talk about intimidating, very scary. These people know a balance sheet way better than I do. I was, this is what I was telling myself then. And so that's been a really big challenge since the beginning of my career, was really getting comfortable talking about numbers and telling the story of numbers. And now that's something I teach, is how to sort of tell your story with your financials. But overcoming that, I feel just took practice. It was the more I did it, the more comfortable I became.
It's a way more laid back approach to growing a business that fits my personality well. I cannot stand hard selling. It just, it feels like manipulation to me. And I can't get down with it. And so, for me, it's not in alignment, but for other people, they love that format. And so really just figuring out what's the business that you want to be known for? What do you want your legacy to be? Not what somebody else is doing, but what is it that you want for your future? And then craft that.
I went to the US, went to college in the US. I'm a computer engineer. I, worked in Silicon Valley, Fortune 500 companies, US government, did some software development until I was about 28. And then I realized something was missing. This actually ties great into our travel story, because that was me, right? I was sitting there something is missing from my life. I couldn't put my finger on it. I knew about the Peace Corps. For those of you who don't know, it's a 2-year volunteer program through the US government where they said, the country to, try to help the local communities. Because my dad was in the Peace Corps in the Philippines. That's how we met my mom. My mom was Peace Corps staff in the Philippines. So I've known about it my whole life. I joke that I was actually born while he was in the Peace Corps. So I did it for the first 7 months of my life. So I was already a Peace Corps volunteer. So I was sitting there in my cube, kind of staring at the computer, and I was like, there's got to be something more to life than this. So I remember distinctly, it was Halloween back in 2005, and I was at a bar, kind of drunk, standing on stage. Not that I was performing, but I was up on stage, kind of looking out all the crowd. And I remember looking at the room and knowing I know a lot of people in there. They were 5 or 10 years older than me, and I knew they were in the same bar, getting drunk with the same people for the last decade, maybe longer, right? I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be here 10 years from now doing exactly the same thing. So I went to work the next day, and with a light hangover, and they invited me into this ceremony because they were going to give a plaque to somebody, another team lead. So I was an IT team lead at the time, saying thank you for 50 years of dedicated service to the company. And I was sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want that plaque. It was a great company. It was on the top 50 companies to work for in the United States. They treated me really well. I mean, I have no complaints about the job. Right. It was just not that fulfilling to me.
You don't want the plaque.
I don't want the plaque. So, there was a commercial on TV at the time that said, if they were to write a book about your life, would anybody want to read it? And that really stuck in my head. And so the next day I went into the office, and, in my lunch break, I applied for the US Peace Corps. Usually takes a year to get in. It took me 12 weeks from the day I applied to the day I touched down in Mexico. I had to sell my house, sell my car, quit my job, sell all my earthly belongings, and then move to Mexico, where they paid me $150 a month as a salary for the next 2 years.
I was able to work with a company in Vietnam, being a Vietnamese refugee, and then having this woman in HR call me from this company in Vietnam and said, we want to have people be more innovative and creative here in our organization. Can you do a workshop for us? And in that planning, My workshops are very fun, engaging. There's a lot of hands-on stuff clearly. And I play. We do a lot of play. So at the very last meeting, she's like, I'm going to bring my chief HR officer because I want her to hear what you're planning. And of course, I was like, okay, I better tell her what I'm doing to make sure that it's in line with the culture, that there's nothing I'm doing that's going to be offensive. And here I am sitting on Zoom, Vietnamese American, 2 Vietnamese women in Vietnam on Zoom. And I tell her, here's what I'd like to go through with you just to make sure there's nothing that I shouldn't be doing. And she looks at me and she's like, do whatever you want. We're trying to disrupt this culture.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, yeah.
Amazing. You're like,
amazing.
yes.
And yeah, talk about full circle. I literally was like, we fled this country because of the lack of freedom.
Yes.
And now you're sitting here telling me I can do whatever I want. Like we're trying to disrupt this whole place.
Just doing what I wanted to do and not looking at somebody else and saying, I want to do it exactly the way you want to do it. I had to learn, especially at my age, how to stand out on my own.
We're so young. I'm like, you're so young. We're not old.
I know, but I did feel, and I feel like that's the reason that a lot of moms and people in their 30s and 40s gravitate towards me, is because I did feel like I started later in life in this industry than a lot of people. And so I felt like I had to overcome that hurdle and connect with brides that are in their 20s and early 30s when I'm a little bit older than them. So there's things that we may not have the same life experiences on, we may not have the same lifestyle about, but I had to figure out the key things that I needed to share to be able to connect with them so that I could still continue to book my ideal clients.
I really like to subscribe to the visual prioritization system, which sounds really technical, but it's not, of thinking about your priorities and thinking about the things on your to-do list as if they are boulders, big rocks, and pebbles. And so this is something that, if you're listening, this is something that you can take with you from this episode. Boulders are those things in your life that really reflect your core values. They are very often, they're important, but they're not urgent. And so most of the time in our day-to-day life, we tend to leave our leftover time for these bolder activities. Things like journaling, things like self-care a lot of times, a consistent workout schedule, meal prep sometimes can be considered a boulder. Calling your grandmother on a weekly basis, cultivating a relationship, thinking about what those core values are that you have, how they translate into real life activities, labeling those as a boulder. Boulders are big, giant. You can push on them all you want and they're not going to move. You put those into your calendar first. You hold space for those first. With the space that's left, that's where you begin dropping in those big rocks. And big rocks are the things on your to-do list that move the needle in your life and work. This is your genius zone work. These are those things like the deadline for your project, completing the report, prepping for the sales call, doing the sales call. These are those things that we typically fill our entire schedule with, is nothing but big rocks. And then we have no time left over for those important boulders that enable us to show up as our best selves. And so the third category is pebbles. And pebbles are all of those little bitty things that have the ability to take over our entire day because they're small. We feel like we're being productive. We feel like we're doing busy work. And so it's, checking email, it's scrolling Instagram, it's scheduling a dentist appointment, it's picking up dry cleaning, all of those little bitty things that they're marginally important but they're not typically urgent. But those are the things that we tend to spend most of our time doing because we're like, okay, I'm going to do these 17 quick things. And then we reach the end of the day and we're like, oh, wait, I didn't do anything of value today. All I did was these little bitty tasks. And so my challenge to you would be that next time you're putting together a to-do list, beside each item on your to-do list, if it's a boulder for you, write a big B, a big uppercase B, and really call that out as a boulder. If it's a big rock, if it's something that's deadline oriented, like this podcast recording right now, like this is a big rock for me, put a BR next to it. And then for everything else that's a little bitty pebble, write a lowercase p next to it.
I have a lot of friends. I feel like, especially like immigrant families tend to find each other. And so I have a lot of friends who I would see, outside of school who were, Iranian, just like I am. And I've seen them, we've all grown up together. And I've seen some of us really like embrace that role of like, I mean, it's just the burden that we have to bear to like teach people what we are. Like, we're not all terrorists. We're not all like, like things that are like you think would go without saying, but they just don't. And some of us have coped a little bit better. And some of us have kind of gone to like a really bitter, kind of angry place, which you can't, I mean, I completely validate their feelings. I understand that response, but it's been interesting to see what happens when somebody leans into like the possibilities of like, okay, I can teach these people, I can try to make an impact, I can try to change a mind here and there. It is exhausting for sure, but I definitely see the benefit to doing that versus just kind of like letting that resentment build up and not being able to kind of like take a minute and at least like try.
2019, I just ripped the Band-Aid off and I just hired a business coach. Before I did anything business related, I hired a business coach, which is why I was able to build my business to a multi-six-figure business in 1 year. It wasn't because I'm like this amazing business guru. It was because I hired help. Just like when I wanted to be a nurse, I didn't just try to be a nurse. I didn't try to go into a hospital and get a nursing job. I went to college.
Yeah.
Right. I got help from people who can help me do it.
One of the things that is so important is being on video. It's going to convert people so much faster. And I keep like harping on this because I've had so many people say, I should do stories. I don't know what to post. I don't know what to share. I feel so weird on video. I don't feel like I don't like the way I look. And then they start doing it and they're like, oh, actually, this is like kind of fun. So that's my first thing. Like, just actually try the thing for like a week. If you hate it, you never have to do it again. You can pick a different platform.
Once I felt confident enough to like actually launch my own business, launch my own website, I did make the investment originally to pay for advertising. So at the time it was much more effective, honestly, than it is now to pay for that particular advertising, but it still works. So putting money behind my mission of what I wanted to do to actually like boost it quickly. And once I was paying for advertising and getting in front of more people, I really started to book. It might be a little different now because social media was not quite the same as what it is now in terms of the opportunities. Like now I don't pay for advertising at all. Everybody finds me organically. But if you're trying to like kind of get there faster, it's not a bad idea to pay for some form of advertising to get yourself in front of your audience more quickly.
So if you're just starting out, you probably don't need to hire someone unless you have the budget and unless you have something that's just huge that you absolutely need help on. So like if you're launching a product and you are about to be in like 50 stores, you probably need somebody to help you out a little bit. But if it's just a slow roll, there's a lot of small things that you can do for yourself to get the PR ball rolling until you're ready to have somebody to bring somebody else on board. So I generally tell people just start small and don't be afraid to start small. So, reach out to your local newspaper and introduce yourself to the editor and say, hey, I'm Melinda. I have this company. We're about to launch or we just launched. We're local. Here's what we do. I would love to talk to you a little bit. And don't be afraid to also dive into your personal story because people want to hear that. And that's what is going to help the readers connect to you and buy into your brand a little bit.
The difference with our celebrity weddings is that it's a lot more work and you have to really watch what you do, what you say, who you bring in to work on the events. Yes, NDAs and all that is involved, but it's just fans are crazy, like in a good way, not a bad way. Like they're excited for you, but then you do have crazy people that it's just a lot of security and a lot of paperwork. And I don't want to say like lying, but a lot of vagueness where, you just don't offer up a lot of information. Like you just keep your mouth shut. And, but that's how I was raised. So it really is, perfect because a lot of people are like, oh, information's power. And, they want to go tell everybody. But these celebrities, like they have a life too. They're people too. They have feelings too. They have messed up family situations too. And then when you get involved in emotional money spending, like with a wedding, I become friends with a lot of these people. They're just people. They piss in the same pot that we do. It's a whole nother level of awareness that consumers are like, oh, that's so cool. And I'm just like, I wouldn't describe it as cool. It's a lot of work, but
yeah,
I'm always honored when we can, take care of that level of privacy. But I mean, every client to us is a VIP client. Like we literally treat everyone the same. We want everyone to have like that princess magical feeling for weddings.
First off, don't try to put out too many episodes a week, because then you're going to lack in your marketing because you don't have enough hours in the day to promote 2 to 3 episodes a week. So stick with maximum of 1 episode a week. You can do bi-weekly if that works better for you, but 1 episode a week max, because you're going to get burnt out. You don't have this huge production team behind you. You can't put out 3 episodes a week. That's just insane. So stick with 1. So start there, but just make sure you're actually promoting it. What we do for our clients typically is we'll create 3 different types of graphics. So we'll create a quote graphic. So we pull a quote from the episode to share on social. We do an audiogram, so just like a little clip from the episode to kind of entice people to listen. And then we do kind of like the podcast announcement, which typically goes out the day that the episode goes live. And that's just kind of like a picture of the host and the title, or the host and the guest and the title, or whatever you want that to be.
We take in content, but we don't consume it. Let's put it that way. Is that, it's like going and eating your dinner and saying, okay, you have a steak dinner and you cut it up into small pieces. And the way that most people eat their information nowadays is they just shove it in, they don't chew it, and they just throw it down their throat. So there's no real understanding of what the taste is, what the flavors are, what is the texture of it. So the context behind what we talk about is lost. And that's where, like you were talking about storytelling, it's so powerful, because I could tell you that, go out there and have a resilient mindset. But if Rob doesn't have a story to tell you why, or that he's ever had a resilient mindset, because maybe I haven't done anything in my life, but I'm saying, hey, you need to have a resilient mindset. It's like, what about you? Do you have one? No. It's like, that's our lives, our journeys are catalysts to helping others to realize their journeys. But at the same time, our lives are fundamentally dictated by how much we go beyond just the normal 4 journeys.
Whether your products, your digital products, your services, your packages, whatever they are, whether they are free or not, like there's a point, like there's a method and there's a point to having free products. It's not just so people can say like, oh, this is such a great thing from Girija. You know what I mean? Then you want to take them down your email funnel. Eventually you want them to get your paid service. And so of course you should take those just as seriously when you're marketing.
Yes.
One thing I did was I took a paper and pen, and then I started writing down all my fears, which has been an obstacle for me. So I had fear of public speaking, fear of being judged, fear of being ignored, fear of failure. So I wrote down all these fears. And then on the side of each of the fears, I just wrote down strategies which I'm going to follow to overcome those fears. And that's what I did. And then my whole goal was to, attack those fears one by one, and then try to overcome them.
Continue every single day to make progress. And they have this attitude and this mindset that is, we just have to keep working on it. And as long as we continue making progress, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I had been so lucky and so fortunate to be around people like that when I thought about this and I was running into so many, naysayers and doubters, I thought it actually could be that they just don't know. And it was much more common in the tech industry to be able to run into people who would say, we're not there yet, versus it can't happen.
For me, I think the biggest thing is having a support system and a team. My husband also worked weekends. He is in new home sales. And so he was gone on the weekends. I was obviously gone on the weekends doing events. And so my in-laws, who are phenomenal, they would take the kids on like the Saturdays that I would have events. And then so it was me dropping them off, going to DC, doing an event, pick them up at like 1 a.m, or my husband would pick them up if he got off, before me, whatever. But for me, I would get up at 5 a.m, and it was an hour and a half commute each way to get to my job from where I live to get to the city. So it was an hour and a half commute going, an hour and a half commute coming home. Then I would come home and then I would obviously do the mom stuff, dinner, bath, all that. Then I would jump on the computer and do work and schedule emails so that it didn't look like I was sending emails at 1, 2 in the morning. Now I would go to bed around 2 and get back up and rinse and repeat.
A mistake that I see a lot of creative entrepreneurs in particular make is that they don't feel like they're ready for something. Like they don't feel like they're ready for a client management system, or they don't feel like they're ready for a website or maybe some basic automations. And I think that's completely false. The sooner that you start with those things, the more you can grow with it, and helps you like make decisions in your business, because these tools are going to kind of put you at a crossroads of like, okay, how am I going to do this? And it forces you to kind of think through your process a little bit. So, from day one, I would suggest, look into some of these tools. It might not be the tool you stick with forever, but look into it and start with it and treat your business like a business, even if you're just starting.
We are too hard on ourselves too. See, men don't care. Like men can have a couple of low years at job, and whether they're very good at compartmentalizing and like, okay, now I need to focus on this, and it's okay if I'm barely performing and it doesn't affect my self-worth, right? Like I'm all set. But women are just I see everyone that I work with is overcompensating at work for something, and they don't know what it is until they really see it. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it. And I'm like, who are you running with? Like, who is in the race? Like, you really have to run your own race, and you really have to define your own timelines and milestones and victories. And you really have to advocate for yourself when you want a break or when you want to come back also. You can't just be, I'm not saying the system is perfect, not at all. But the problem is the less women who get into the system, the less we'll fix it. It's the responsibility. You have to fight it, unfortunately, in the beginning till you can actually be a part of that machine and actually fix it.
Just to have that gauge and that accountability from someone to say, no, that's not going to make you money right now. Yeah. That's not where your focus needs to be. You need to be focused on this, It's just that whole thing. Community. We got to have the support.
Yeah.
We got to have the support.
That's what we're sold, right? Everyone's like, oh, 4-hour work week. You only have to do this once and then you can make money and you can scale to the moon and you're going to be set for life. But so many people are realizing when they get into this, that's not actually the reality. It takes a lot of testing and tweaking and figuring out not only what strategies actually work, but also what strategies work for your personality. And some people are more likely to be able to hop on a podcast and talk about their life and their business and what they do. Some people are more prone to being able to show up on video. Some people are terrified of video. Mm-hmm. And you've got to figure out, you've got to kind of sort of work through all of the different ways that you can grow a business and figure out, how do I function as a person? How am I going to be able to show up in my best self? Because that is the way that you're going to sell the best.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.